Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Welcome, it's Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. I'm Jake Watroba. Alongside of me is Arman Kafai down in Dallas. Steven has the weekend off, so we're looking for... I think
it's 2 weekends off.
2 weekends off, so we're looking for replacements. We're going to have one replacement on later on in the show with writer, contributor for Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast.wordpress.com. Eric Langmack will be joining us here later on in the show to discuss the U.S. soccer coaching license controversy. You may have seen that on Twitter. And it was also on was it socceramerica.com? Is that what?
Yep.
There was that article that was up a couple days ago. But Armand, how you doing? How was that late FC Dallas Minnesota match?
It was terrible. No, it was terrible. Don't get that positive tone in your voice. It was awful. I sat through a 2.5 hour rain delay. Yeah, I mean, the clouds started coming in, and everyone in the press box just looked up and were like, yep, we're going to go through that rain delay. So, I mean, we had that long rain delay, 2 hours. Got to watch a game. I think got done with everything, like around 1. Got some food. Went to, got some In-N-Out for, y'all love some In-N-Out. And yeah, it was awful. I can't imagine watching it. I talked to Callum Williams. We were both just laughing about how terrible it was to wait 2.5 hours because there was talk that they might not even be able to play it tonight. They'd have to play it Sunday. And, yeah, I wouldn't go back if I had to do that. But
let me ask you this. What are some of the activities you do when waiting through a weather delay as somebody in the media?
Oh, okay.
So what are you doing in the press box, I guess?
So for a little bit, I watched some MLS action on ESPN Plus. I think Vancouver and Red Bull is going on. It's a really good game. I think Red Bull tied up real late. Then you go around and you start mingling with people. Met a few people, sat in on a couple radio shows, just talking to people here or there. Like I said, just introducing yourself to some people in there that you don't usually talk to because everyone's busy, but with 2.5 hour rain delay, no one's busy. I mean, it's pretty fun in the moment, and then you realize, oh wait, we still have a game to do, so it gets pretty crappy. But I mean, overall, it's just a bunch of mingling, just talking to people, seeing how they're doing. Just normal journalism things, big J journalism things.
Well, okay, well that sounds really exciting. So no like card games or anything like that. Just shooting the breeze with.
Yeah, watching some USL. Oh. Some FC Cincinnati. When the new expansion team's coming in, you gotta get some researching, get some scouting in.
Sure. And I think that's a good point or a good place to segue here. Speaking of expansion franchises, David Beckham's Miami MLS franchise released its logo, its name, and colors earlier this week. The club will be called, unofficially, I guess. It's been trademarked, so we're going to say it's unofficially official. International Club de Football Miami, with a colors scheme of black, white, and pink. And if you haven't seen the badge, it's a very unique badge. I would say it's probably going to be the best-looking badge, logo, crest, whatever word you want to use, in the league. It features 2 herons, I believe, are the birds.
Yeah.
2 herons. Their legs are. Would you say crossed? Would be the.
I guess, right? Like crossed into an M shape.
Yeah, crossed into an M shape with Miami above their head. It's very unique. I'm probably not doing a very good job of describing it, but it's definitely one of the more unique logos, not only in MLS but probably in North American sports. What's your take on the color scheme, the logo itself? I know I wrote for the site a couple weeks ago that Miami, with the colors and with the name of the club and the logo, should do something that feels very Miami-like. I actually argued they should name the club Miami Vice SC and do like a playoff of the hit 80s TV show with the color scheme, the neon pink with the teal or sky blue, whatever color it is. But this also feels very Miami. Do you agree?
I love this badge. I think I'm in love with it because as a huge guy who cares about jerseys, Jake, as everyone knows, as a guy who cares about the branding of certain teams, I think they do an excellent job of capturing Miami in a very modern and slick looking way. I think that's one of the most important things. It's very hip. I think this is something that you can see on polos. I definitely love the color scheme, that pink and black. I think it's going to be very popular, as a casual jersey to wear. Kind of like, the black, I think it's the Blackhawks, Chicago. I see a lot of people wearing those hockey jerseys. It has the potential to be very clean, very crisp. The heron, I mean, I thought it was a flamingo at first, to be honest with you. And then I realized...
I did too until I saw Alexi Lawless say it was a heron. And I'm like, I think that is the state bird of Florida.
Yeah, exactly. So the heron provides a very unique twist on it. I love the little, there's like a crest in the crest, like the big circle. And then like there's a crest of the Miami and the two herons in there. And then they form the M. They embrace that pink. And I think that's really important because it has a chance to be like one of those jerseys. I know you see like Waka Flocka Flame, 2 Chainz. They always rock the Atlanta jerseys, the Atlanta United jerseys. Mm-hmm. I think this has potential to be one of those jerseys in the rotation, especially with a lot of hip hop artists, because it's just so clean, and I think it does capture, part of Miami, and I think it does a really great job. I'm just curious to see what the jerseys look like. If Adidas can ruin these jerseys too, I'm gonna be really upset. But I hope they don't, because they have potential to be awesome.
Yeah, no, I'll be definitely curious to see how they incorporate the pink, because there isn't a team in, at least in U.S., like the 4 major or 5 major now U.S. sports. I don't believe there's a team that wears pink as one of its primary colors.
I think they saw the success of the Miami Heats with the Miami Vice, and we're like, we can tap into that on a permanent basis.
Oh yeah, and that's what I even noted that too in the article, which those Miami Heat jerseys were so clean. They were just like those were one of the best jerseys in the NBA last year. I'm kind of sad.
They sold out.
I'm sad. Yeah, they did, and you can't buy them anymore. They're not going to wear them this year or for this upcoming NBA season. But I'll be curious to see. Like you said, it's a very clean look. I think it'll be a popular look because the pink is unique. Like I said, there's no team in sports that has a pink.
And it's not overly pink either.
No.
It is a perfect, I guess, amount.
Right.
Pink is for some reason perceived as a feminine color, which I don't agree with. And for those who are concerned about that, I guess they could still rock it if they're genuinely concerned about looking feminine, which I think is a completely different argument. But it's just a perfect amount.
Yeah, and I really appreciate teams that use odd colors, or maybe not commonly used colors in their jerseys, like the San Jose Sharks with that teal, the Miami Dolphins with that neon orange and green, or not green, but that teal green, instead of the standard navy and red that you see most clubs using. But
no, I agree.
So, yeah. But Arman, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about MLS in the quote-unquote 1.0 clubs and how they seem to be struggling, at least off the field, in terms of attendance.
It's bad. And when I looked at the Miami crest, it kind of just triggered me in some of the MLS 1.0s. And it's mainly the original teams, and we throw Chicago in there because they were made 2 years later. But I mean, if you look at it, Chicago is looking pretty bad in terms of their 8th straight loss. Their coach, Valko Paunovic, was asked, how do you feel about all this losing? And he actually said, quote unquote, stop asking me this. We're explicit suffering. You can fill in the blank. And a lot of these teams are struggling on and off the pitch. It looks like Chicago, I mean, we've talked about this off the record, Jake, but it looks like they're looking very interesting in terms of burning the bridges with their supporters groups and that new USL team with Tom Ricketts. coming in 2020 with a giant stadium. Something I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look that good for the Fire right now, especially if they're gonna be hot garbage. Then you look at the Rapids, who I think they're hoping Kellen Acosta became their attendant savior. Which I'm not sure is the best option.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, the Revolution still playing Gillette, and still, which I mean is the second worst stadium situation outside of NYCFC's, which we gotta admit is pretty garbage. And
but at least NYCFC is in the heart of New York. It's in downtown New York. It's not in Foxborough, which is 45 minutes outside of Boston, I think. I mean, Steven can correct me on that one in a future episode if he wants to, but it's smack dab in between Providence and Boston. It's not for an MLS club. It's not the best location.
No, it's not. And a lot of these MLS teams, this MLS 1.0s, are struggling because MLS told them, hey, you should start building these suburbs because we want to attract those suburban areas. And now we all know that's not the move. That's not the best way to attract people to go to a soccer game. I mean, look, FC Dallas and Frisco, suburb. We can go on and on through the list. I'd probably say half these teams have that issue. I mean, Jake, my problem is these expansion teams are kind of, keeping MLS up, and these MLS 1.0s are still like kind of the older owners that MLS. If these owners were to start a team in MLS right now, I don't think they'd buy into MLS right now.
No, I think you're right. And you can even look to DC United right now too. They just opened up Audi Field, and I mean, I don't know how many home games have they had since it opened. 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
And I think they've
sold out one.
That's ridiculous. I mean, for a club that for the better part of a decade has been asking for a soccer-specific stadium and trying to get out of RFK, trying to get away from those quote-unquote RFK raccoons. They can't sell out their new stadium, and maybe that's because I know there was inclement weather a few weeks ago. I'm sure ticket prices are much higher than they were at RFK, which is understandable. But these MLS 1.0 clubs need like a breath of fresh air. They need a rebrand. They need something to get the fans excited, and I don't think the Robert Krafts or the Lamar Hunts of the world are going to be Dan Hunt. Sorry, are the owners to do that. And now you can say, sure, they helped save the league when the league desperately needed it, 15, 20 years ago or whatever. But it's not 1999 anymore. It's 2018. You have these clubs in Atlanta. You have, or even Orlando. You have NYCFC, Seattle, Portland, Minnesota, LAFC, Toronto. I mean,
even the Galaxy for an original side.
Galaxy and Sporting KC do fine for these MLS 1.0 clubs.
And they have something similar, right? The Galaxy continue to bring in big name talent, and SKC went under a complete rebrand, and it's for the better. They've interacted with the community, and they look so good. And with all this, MLS to Austin, which we'll also talk to Chris Bils about. We mentioned that all this MLS to Austin talk, Columbus moving, it has me thinking, who's next, Jake? Because someone else is next. MLS is trying to phase out some of these owners, I feel like. But who's next?
Well, you hit on it a couple minutes ago about keeping your eye on Chicago. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, I get Chicago is a big market, third biggest market in the U.S. But you look at what the Ricketts have done. They own the Cubs. I mean, that's a pretty big name in Chicago. They're building a 20,000-seat stadium in downtown Chicago, or at least one of the neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. You look at that, you have this stadium out in, I believe it's Bridgeview.
Mm-hmm.
Bridgeview, which sounds like it's a pain to get to, whether that's via the train. And I'm not even sure if you can get to it via the train, but at least driving, it sounds like a pain. They just seem like the most likely option, and we can get into the Colorado Rapids, who are owned by Stan Kroenke, who has shown in the last couple of years he has no problem relocating a team to somewhere else, as he did with the St. Louis Rams to relocating them to LA. So I guess you could make an argument they could be next too. But to me, it just looks like with the Ricketts getting into USL, that's a huge name in Chicago. I mean, the Chicago Cubs are kind of the crown jewel of Chicago sports. A USL team doesn't need a 20,000 seat stadium. I'm sorry. To me, connecting dots that maybe shouldn't be connected. To me, though, that just seems like that's something that we should be keeping an eye on as we move forward in the future here over the next couple of years.
My thought process is, I mean, I was looking into it. It's like how likely is it for them to move? I don't see them. If Chicago were to lose its team, it would not come back in that form, the USL team, until that Bridgeview lease expires. There's no way. The lease manually states that if an MLS team within 75 miles is to operate, it has to operate at Bridgeview. So there's no way that the USL Chicago team could become an MLS team for the foreseeable future. There's no way. And you say, oh, you can maybe buy out Bridgeview. Bridgeview knows that it has MLS by the balls. Like, they can do whatever they want. They could ask for an exuberant amount of money, and they won't lose sleep over it at all. Whoever did that lease is a genius. It's on the real. They're a genius. But I think Chicago is next, Jake. I don't know to where though. The question is, where would you move? Would you move to Detroit if you were? Because I mean, it's kind of close proximity wise. You might keep that. Maybe not really, but you might keep some of that Chicago market. Maybe he wants to come to Detroit to watch a soccer. I don't know. I don't think they're so bad on the field right now. Off the field, they're pretty. Remember that playoff game, Jake? I don't know if you remember, where they had like 10,000 people at the match against who was it?
Was it Red Bull? Was that last year?
Yeah, Red Bull last year. Yep, the 6-3 matchup. So bad. You can make the argument Colorado. I mean, what have they done? I mean, I feel like MLS trying to phase out the bad owners, and try to get some people who are going to invest. I mean, FC Dallas, they don't have that much investment. They did invest in the Hall of Fame, but so what? That doesn't help the league. I don't think it does at all. Right.
And yeah, I agree with you. I think Chicago probably is the team to keep your eye on over the next couple of years in terms of relocating now, whether it's to Detroit or Sacramento or Phoenix or maybe even Columbus if the Crew do move to Austin. And I think we'll get into that with Chris later on here about the potential of the Crew staying in Columbus under new ownership and Precourt essentially getting an expansion franchise in a roundabout way. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But up next is Eric Langmack, and then after that we will be speaking with Chris Bils of the Austin American-Statesman. Joining us today is contributing writer for Uncle Sam Soccer Podcast.wordpress.com. Him and I go way back to our days in the Burnsville soccer youth setup. I don't really know how else to say it. He's Eric Langmack. He joins us today for the first time, making his Uncle Sam debut. How's it going?
Going good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we go way back, playing with the fifth grade Burning Monkeys with that big orange hammer.
I forgot
from the good old days.
I forgot all about that. The Burning Monkeys. That was our name. Which looking
all the way to the title.
Looking back at it now, that is one of the dumbest names I think I've ever heard for a team. But all right. Well, today we're going, or for this segment at least, we're going to be discussing the USSF coaching license controversy. Yesterday, SoccerAmerica.com released an article interviewing Ryan Mooney and Nico. I hope I'm saying this last name right. Romine, is that right? Does that sound right, guys?
Sounds about right. Close enough.
Close enough. We're gonna roll with it. Nico Romine. Nico is the Chief Sporting Development Officer, and Ryan is the Chief Soccer Officer. In the interview, they get asked various questions as to why are coaching licenses necessary within U.S. soccer. They go into details about the diversity within the coaching ranks. Did either of you have a chance to read this article?
I did, Jake. I did, and I didn't like it, to be quite honest with you. There was a bunch of answers in there. I forgot there was one specific one that it was a whole bunch of nothing. It was just a bunch of just words scrambled together in order to have I guess a big effect. All this. In reality, it was just, I think it shows, the article at least, how incompetent USSF still is, even after we just had those elections for what we thought would be some sort of change. But I think we still got the same incompetent USSF.
Eric, did you get a chance to skim over the article? What were your general thoughts about it?
Yeah, I would echo with Arman. I've been thinking about it after reading that and some other tweets that have been going throughout this U.S. soccer landscape, even lower level players that are echoing that there's an issue with the setup. And I think it does come back, and this is going to sound way out of left field, but from my own previous coaching experience, I think it comes down to having something to do with how MLS and just U.S. soccer structure as a whole is set, where there's not an up or a down. It's just oh, you're an MLS coach. Okay, great. You're an MLS coach. You can get hired. And if you want to become a B-level certified, you have to be part of the development academy and stuff like that. Just setting the unnecessary barriers where, if you wanted to work your way up, you had to have an in somewhere, some sort of special treatment to be able to advance rather than doing it on your own merit or skills.
Now, like Eric said, and like the article said too, there are boundaries or limitations to what you can accomplish in regards to getting these licenses. Do you think these requirements are holding back U.S. soccer right now? Arman, we'll start with you.
Yes, I think they are, because I think we are lacking, good coaches within U.S. soccer. I know there's plenty of people who want to be good coaches, but it's kind of tough when, in order to get your a B license and above, you have to be working with a DA. There's only a limited amount of DAs in U.S. soccer. I mean, there's also a lot of other things that are holding back U.S. soccer as a whole, but I think coaching is a key part of it. I feel like there's not that many. I guess there's some good American coaches out there, but then again, there's also some not good ones. I mean, who do we think is the best coach in MLS right now? I mean, record-wise, you'd probably say it's Tata Martino, who's Argentinian, and you have Oscar Pareja in the West, who's Colombian. I mean, the American coaches are there, but at the same time, it's so tough to get all these licenses. You got to take time out of your own life. You got to get your funds. It's an expensive thing. So, I mean, I do think it's holding us back, Jake, and there has to be a better way, because if in other countries, it's cheaper relative to what you have to pay in the United States.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, I don't know if it was you who made this point off air, and I don't want to turn this into a promotion relegation discussion, because I feel like that could really really get us on a tangent. But essentially how I believe your point was, if we had promotion relegation, it would let the best of the best rise to the top, rather than having these people jump through all these hoops and pay all these. Not to mention, too, we didn't even get onto fees and how much it costs to get one of these licenses. But you made the point that promotion relegation would maybe help solve these issues.
Maybe not entirely, but it could help solve a little bit of the issues. I mean, the fact is that you can't advance past CL unless you're a DA. It's a little bit ridiculous. Eric, I know you're the coach here. What do you think about that?
So I actually think that you're actually not too far off in that. I know it seems kind of far-fetched, but just so that listeners have an idea, I have a Minnesota youth coaching license, not one through USSF, from several years back when I coached both competitive club teams as well as high school. And one of the things that I would notice, and that I was brought into, especially the club teams, was there's a promotion relegation system even in our youth soccer setups. And so, like, aside from making the players better as players with their tactics and their skills, like, my goal was to help them as a team get up to the next level so they could then entice even better players from neighboring cities to come play with them. And so I think too many coaches have to focus on the winning aspect because that's what parents want, that's what kids want, and that's kind of what's set up before them. And so I think if that's the setup of the youth system down to the state and local level, the capping of it, so to speak, once you get to any type of professional league, and obviously college, you don't go up or down either. There's not anything else that replicates it. And so coaches are forced to go for results rather than actually developing players with their skills and their tactics to be better. And so I think they actually go more hand in hand than some people may admit, just because that's the focus of the coaches, is to get results while developing players rather than let's develop players that are 12. Whether they win or lose does not really matter.
Now, the other key point in the article that I kind of wanted to touch on here as well was a quote from Ryan Mooney, who is the chief soccer officer with U.S. Soccer. Mooney was asked about the number of Latinos in the national team setup for both boys and girls. This was essentially part of Rooney's answer about that. I share very openly that we have an active recruiting efforts to try and reach more diverse applicant pools, and we have found that many times, very unfortunately, that the interest is not there for the opportunity or the job we have to offer. If I remember correctly from the article, there is one Latino coach in the national team setup right now. With all these fees associated with getting your licenses, does that not echo why this is an issue? Why there aren't? Basically have a bunch of old white dudes or who are coaches within U.S. Soccer.
It's elitist. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but it's elitist. It's look. If you go through all the requirements, because I was looking to potentially get a couple badges here or there. I was looking through it, and man, you have to. I think when you get to your C, you got to take 4 to 6 weeks off, or go to some on-site training for around 4 to 6 weeks. Either your C or B, and then you have to pay, and then you probably won't find one. Like, I know in the Dallas area, it's very difficult to find an in-person class. Like, sometimes you might have to go to Tyler, which is a couple hours out, or something somewhere along those lines, or like maybe even like a neighboring state. I guarantee you, not all 50 states offer, coaching classes and what. I mean, if you probably want to advance, there probably isn't any in Alaska. I mean, let's be real. Like, there probably isn't that many in Alaska. 'Cause, I mean, there's no one around there. So, I mean, they probably have to fly out, invest money. And it is elitist. It's like made for the people in power to stay in power and for them to, not let it up at all. I mean, it's just, there's so much, what is it? I can't think of the word.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, bureaucracy. Yeah, it's so elitist, and I don't know why we have that. Why don't we want to have a culture that we have coaches, that come up and that want to help U.S. Soccer? I mean, from what I've seen, all the coaches want to do, they don't care about the money or anything. They just want to help U.S. Soccer as a whole and hope for the sport to advance. But instead, we should have a bunch of grumpy men who just want to control just consolidate their power and control it, and not let anyone else go through. I don't know, Eric. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, very much so. I had seen some Twitter rants throughout, and there's this guy out in Virginia, I believe, he's 26, single, unmarried, and he's saved up for a couple years so that he can try and go through these coursing license. And to get to his B, he's actually volunteering at a development academy just so he can have that association so that he can get to his B license. Now, he's only 2 years younger than me, so I'm 28. I have a wife. I have a 3, almost 4-year-old daughter. So I have to provide for them. There's no way that I can take off even, a couple weekends to go to Kansas City or down to Houston. I'm in Dallas as well, near Arman, or over to New Orleans, or wherever you have to go to travel. That's money that we just don't have. And so if I wanted to coach again, I'm stuck in that pickle of, I can't, I either have to give up my job or sacrifice time for my family or do something. I can't, advance myself in that way because of the situation that I'm stuck in.
And that's not even getting to, and you guys, especially Eric, and less so me, because I haven't really looked into it all that much, but you guys aren't even factoring in the cost that is associated with taking these tests or taking these courses to get your license. I think I saw an estimation. I was looking on someone's tweet. It might have been Hercules Gomez tweet about the Latinos not having interest in coaching within USSF. Essentially, I think one person tweeted him that the estimation was right around $10,000 to $15,000, and that might not have even included travel costs. I mean, at that point, it seems like you're limiting. You're basically limiting who can take these courses, and it's almost a microcosm of the issues that face U.S. soccer within the talent pool within the national team. Soccer has become worldwide. It's associated with poor countries or poor communities. You only need a ball to play, but in America, you need these thousands upon thousands of dollars to join these teams or these clubs or whatever, and a lot of people can't afford it.
You're spot on, Jake. I mean, I was talking to a parent actually of a kid that's playing, and he was telling me the cost around $3,000, and that's not including for his kid to play. That's not including playing a hotel. I mean, you probably have to buy a new jersey every single year because the kid's growing. All these little things. I mean, I kind of ran about it on Twitter a little bit, but I mean, it's kind of hard to find a park with goals, at least in the Plano Frisco area, which is, I guess, more upper middle class than anything. So you can't. It's very tough for I would say many people to find an open soccer field with goals in place to play. If you're on the the lower income side of things, I think it's very tough for you to get into soccer unless you get, I guess the words, get lucky, and you kind of get noticed by someone who is a part of these free DAs, such as in Dallas, I think Red Bull has a free DA as well, and then they can help you out from there. Because outside of that, it's tough. I mean, even high school soccer, it's kind of neglected, right? Because I know my old high school was playing on turf that was like 10 to like 12, 13 years old, and people were almost their feet were getting caught in the turf. It's very neglected as well. Even though a lot of the costs are covered, you still have it's tough. I don't know, it's tough, and not a lot of, I guess, colleges really care that much about high school soccer anymore. It's more all about looking at the DAs to recruit from there to improve their programs. I mean, I think the cost is a barrier of entry for many, and I think you're right, Jake. It's an issue that we don't just see on the coaching level, that we see almost across all of U.S. soccer.
Yeah, and wrapping up here, what do you? So we have Carlos Cordero now. He's now the new president of U.S. soccer. Do you guys envision that he will do anything to maybe lower the costs or make the requirements to get your license a little less strict, or is this going to be the same old U.S. soccer, and 8 to 12 years from now, we're still going to be talking about these issues?
Eric, you want this one first? Yeah, go for it.
I'll go for it. I think that there might be some improvement, but I would say probably on the negligible side of things. I mean, Cuadrado, he's not new to U.S. soccer. He's not, coming from out of left field, so to speak, to kind of help change U.S. soccer. He was, within the setup already. He, has ideas, but I think because he's, I don't want to say ingrained, but he's been involved with it so much that it just becomes a status quo. And until there's either a major push, which I wouldn't even say all of this recent, information with articles and people on Twitter, I don't think that is necessarily going to be enough, but I think it could potentially, if Ernie Stewart has, starts to push some on that, how much that is in part of his new position, I don't know, or if there's a new, the new coach that comes in, if that kind of has some sort of trickle down effect, but I don't see too much of a change coming from Cordero.
I don't either, Eric. I really don't, because I don't think he needs to make that much changes to even stay in power. He needs to do just, certain things. Like we saw the technical director spot get opened up. I mean, what is that really? Do we actually know? It seems like we have no idea what it is. We just got hired. I don't think we'll see that much change at all, because the way U.S. soccer thinks about it is everything is going fine. We have players right now in the DA that are going to Europe. I think Europe is noticing that the American market is very undervalued, especially at the lack of a compensation system, so they can just poach and go. I would say that they probably think that people still probably think that the 2018 missing the World Cup was a fluke, and that was a once in a 30-year thing, and it won't happen again. And I think it's a state of complacency that we're in, even though we've started seeing that, in MLS especially, it's very tough for the domestic players to crack the 18, especially the domestic young players, because they're probably just not good enough at this stage compared to some of the other players that are being brought in. I think U.S. soccer as a whole is not going to change as much. Like I told Jake, I would not be surprised if Dave Sarakan was our coach going into the next World Cup, because he's getting all this nice public press, and it seems like every single time there's a rumor that U.S. soccer is talking to, like a Juan Carlos Osorio or like, a Sampioli, it's all just shut down immediately. So, I kind of have a feeling, Sarakan might be the guy who stays. I don't know. But I don't see any changes, Jake. What do you think about it?
I'll leave you guys with this quote from our good friend Sunil Gulati. You don't make wholesale changes on a ball. Was it on a ball that goes 2 inches wide? Is that what the quote was essentially?
Yeah, 2 inches wide, right? Because they hit the post when Clemens hit the post at Trinidad.
Yeah, they're not. I don't envision changes. I don't. My whole take on Carlos Cordero is he's just more the same, obviously. So I don't foresee anything changing with U.S. soccer or the licensing for that matter. So with that, Eric, where can we find your work? Where can we find you on Twitter? This is our shameless plug. You get to do it. This is your chance to do the shameless plug. Big day for
awesome. You. Thanks, guys, so much for having me first time on the podcast. You can find me writing for Uncle Sam Soccer Podcast.wordpress.com, Twitter at Eric Langmack. You can find that attached on or at least how to spell that properly, because that's an issue, on the website, Eric Langmack. So definitely come check out. I'm always retweeting and responding and interacting with people. I definitely have plenty of opinions, so come interact and we'll have some fun.
Alrighty, thanks a lot, Eric.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Joining us now on Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast is freelance reporter for the Austin American-Statesman, Chris Bils. Chris, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well.
Oh, it was a long day yesterday with the FC Dallas Minnesota delay. So
yeah.
that was it was pretty rough to say the least. Especially when you're there waiting 2.5 hours in the press box, just waiting for that game to start. I know, Jake, you were watching on TV. You probably fell asleep at some point, right?
I got sick of watching Minnesota play, so I just turned. I tuned off. I turned it off at the end of the first half. So
I don't blame you. That game went on way too late. But outside of that, we're doing well. I know, Chris, you've been a really busy guy the last few weeks. I mean, honestly, the last basically year with all this Austin stuff. Can you just give us an update on what happened this week in terms of MLS to Austin?
Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's been almost a year, and really, this is the first. I don't want to say the first. There's been a steady stream of news, as you guys know, since last October. But as far as what Precourt Sports Ventures and the investor operator of the Columbus Crew, Anthony Precourt, as far as what they've been trying to get done in Austin, locating a stadium site and getting it agreed upon. They finally got that done this week. On Wednesday, the Austin City Council agreed to terms that would allow Precourt Sports Ventures to build a stadium on city-owned land in North Austin at a site called McCalla Place. So the next, I guess we'll just leave it there. So that's what Precourt Sports Ventures has been trying to get done, and they finally did. And so that should open the door for there to be an MLS team here as soon as next spring.
Now, Chris, you had mentioned off air that you are from the state of Ohio. Can you give us your personal thoughts on just everything with Save the Crew and MLS to Austin, as far as just the divide between the two cities and the MLS side of things?
Yeah, it's been a long 10 months of hearing both sides, and I definitely do hear both sides as far as living here in Austin, seeing how everybody's processing everything, and the excitement around a potential MLS team, and then hearing from back home and hearing from the Save the Crew folks, and the movement that they've had. It's obviously generated quite a bit of attention locally and nationally and even internationally, but there's obviously still a lawsuit to play out in Ohio, and I think it's interesting that after all this time, the vote finally came down, and there's certainly some pessimism coming from some people in Columbus, but a lot of people feel still confident in what they've done, and that there might be a solution to be had in Columbus, even if the Crew ends up moving to Austin. So I guess I don't know if that really answers your question, but I definitely have been hearing and trying to report both sides and all sides of this story.
Overall, Chris, me and Jake and Steven on the show have talked about how MLS kind of just lets the 1.0 franchises kind of just do their own thing, while the expansion franchises such as Seattle, I think I'd say Toronto, Atlanta especially, have all, I guess, risen up and become just powerhouses. But off the field, we see majority of the MLS, I guess, quote unquote 1.0 teams struggle with attendance, marketing, and sometimes even on the field. Do you think the league should potentially do something to kind of help out these MLS 1.0 sides, or should they try to maybe phase out the bad owners? I don't know. Do you think the league should do something to help out these sides?
Well, No, I don't know if I have an answer to that question per se, but I do think it's interesting how Major League Soccer has handled this situation with the Columbus Crew. And, this big vote happened on Wednesday, and there were celebrations in Austin, celebrating the arrival of potentially the city's first Major League sports franchise. Meanwhile, the league has yet to comment on the vote or what it means from a league level. At the end of the day, they own the teams. They get to decide what happens. But judging from the reaction from Anthony Precourt on Wednesday, it sounds like there's going to be a team in Austin, but we still haven't heard that from the league level. And so it is interesting how they've handled this particular situation. We haven't, other than a few comments from Don Garber when he is in interviews with other media or national media, I should say. And this is obviously a topic that comes up. We haven't heard from the league level about how they're processing things and what role they're going to take in potentially moving the Columbus Crew or, maybe starting a new team in Austin. It sure looks like they're going to move the Columbus Crew if they can. But this lawsuit in Ohio, I think, has kind of tied their hands as far as speaking about the situation and what their actual plans are.
Hey, Chris, that's a good point to I guess want to touch on about the pending lawsuit in the state of Ohio with the Modell law. Is there an update on that you're aware of?
Well, there's going to be a hearing on September 4th, I believe, to discuss the motion from Precourt and MLS, the motion to dismiss the lawsuit. That will be the first public hearing of this lawsuit. So the first time that we'll publicly should get to hear from the parties and kind of hear what they have to say. So that's the next move as far as the lawsuit goes. I will say from the Austin perspective, I don't think it's really dampened the mood a whole lot. I think there's an understanding among Austin soccer fans that they've been told that if they got the stadium site that there would be a team here next spring. Still waiting to find out where the temporary site might be, but people and even Precourt Sports Ventures seems to be moving along business as usual with that plan, and we'll see what announcements they have coming out, and presumably the MLS will allow them to make.
I heard Dell Diamond was one of the temporary venue options they had. Is that true?
Yeah, Dell Diamond is. It's looking like maybe the most viable option at the moment. UT has still remained fairly quiet. Chris Del Conte told our Statesman columnist Kirk Bowles that there haven't been any serious discussions between the university and Precourt Sports Ventures about playing at either DKR, Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium, where the Longhorns football team plays, or at Mike A. Myers, the 20,000 seat soccer and track venue that it seems would be the most central location that would fit with natural grass and everything that they would need. Other than there's no luxury boxes and things like that, which could be a potential snag, but it looks like Dell Diamond might be the spot if UT. I mean, UT gets to decide what they want to do, right? It's their venue, and they certainly don't need the money.
Chris, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here, and me and Arman and Steven, who's out of town right now, were discussing this earlier this morning. I thought there was an interesting quote in your piece for the Statesman this past week, I believe it was on Thursday, from Josh Babetsky, who is the head of MLS in Austin. He was quoted as saying, "It's been a long 5-year plan from crazy guy with a Twitter account through this movement that we started to this whole supporters group to today." This obviously being after the Austin City Council approved the McCullough place. Anthony Precourt became an investor in the Crew 5 years ago on July 30th, 2013. Is there a connection between these two that we're not aware of, or am I connecting dots that shouldn't be connected?
I think those dots can't be connected because look, Josh, Josh and I have talked about this in length, some on the record, some off the record, about what he knew and when, and he still hasn't really told me exactly, but Josh moved from the New York area here in 2013. He was a fan of the Philadelphia Union, and was really interested in what Sons of Ben did to attract that team. And so he was trying to do something similar in Austin. If you trace back and look at what he's written over the years, I mean, it's been a lot of speculation, a lot of things that would not lead you to believe he knew anything about the Columbus Crew. And then in February of 2017, he wrote a blog saying that the Columbus Crew could move to Austin. And obviously, that was 8 months before it went public. And so a lot of people have tried to trace that back and wonder, if Josh knew anything. Now, the thing that you have to understand is that Josh was following the potential of there being MLS in Austin a lot more closely than anybody else was for a long time. And so there might have been some breadcrumbs there, some business people that we've heard that, there was a focus group that was done in, I believe, late 2016 or early 2017, around the same time that Precourt Sports Ventures put out a survey in Columbus about a new stadium. And so those wheels were starting to move and nobody really knew it. And obviously Josh had some knowledge and heard some things, but to trace that all the way back to 2013, I don't think I just haven't seen the proof in the pudding to believe that. And when Josh says a 5-year plan, he's talking about his plan. He wanted to attract a team here. His plan was expansion, and this just happened to fall in Austin's lap. And obviously, as somebody who wants MLS in Austin, he was happy to jump on the bandwagon and support that. And so I think that's the backstory there. If you guys have more questions, obviously you might want to get Josh on to answer those, or if so. But that's my understanding of Josh Bubetsky, and believe me, I've had those questions and asked him point blank about those things, and to my knowledge, he didn't know anything before about maybe late 2016 and into February when he wrote that blog in 2017.
And Chris, we all know about the USL team that just came in, the Austin Italics. No, the Austin Bold. We all know it's Austin Bold FC. But first off, I have no idea what they're doing with that name. But what do you think is going to happen with them? I mean, I know they want to play, but they're not the top soccer dog anymore. And
well, look, they're going to play. They launched their brand. They've got jerseys. They've got a few players. They've signed all their players to multiple year contracts. They're ready to go, and they're going to have a stadium built out at Coda. They're going to launch that thing. And so, assuming things go according to plan with Precourt, there's going to be 2 professional soccer teams in Austin where there haven't been any for 3 years. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, I think somebody said this morning I was on the throw-in, they said, we haven't had any soccer here, and now we've got soccer up to our eyeballs, pro soccer, that is. So, it's definitely an interesting time to be a soccer fan or soccer interested in Austin.
Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Go ahead and tell the listeners where they can find your work and where they can find you on Twitter.
Sure, yeah. Follow me at Chris Bils for any updates, in Austin and potentially in Columbus. And read myself and Kevin Lytle on statesman.com. We'll have you covered for any soccer that happens in the capital city in Austin.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Thanks again to Chris Bils for his time again today, providing some wonderful insight into what is going on with the MLS2 Austin and the Save the Crew movement. Arman, what was your biggest takeaway from his interview?
Well, I mean, it feels like the Columbus Crew are finally going to move to Austin. I mean, that's what it feels like. I mean, I don't think the Modell law will actually, maybe it will, but I don't think it will cause anything to happen. And I think we'll be seeing Austin play in, sadly, another baseball stadium in 2019 because they seem to not want to negotiate the hard stuff with UT. So we're going to be seeing the Crew play in a baseball stadium for two seasons before that stadium at McCullough Place is made. I mean, it's not ideal to see them play at Dale Diamond, but I think it's the only thing that they're going to do. And I guess yay for another soccer stadium, huh? I mean,
yeah,
that'll be the new trend.
That'll be gross having to watch
terrible.
Another team play on a baseball stadium. The other thing I thought was interesting too, maybe not so much for the interview, but just the fact that Precourt is making promises that this team, there will be an MLS team in Austin starting next season, when we haven't even figured out what's going to go on with the court cases in the state of Ohio that are, I guess if you're a Crew fan, that's hoping to block the move of the Crew to Austin. So at that point, I mean, it sounds like Precourt could be making some promises that maybe he can't keep.
So my thought process is this. They're probably going to keep all the Columbus stuff in Columbus and start a new team from scratch, I guess, in Austin. So are they really moving the Crew, or is it like, or there might be like a workaround? Like, am I wrong for thinking that?
I think that I've seen people talk about that's a potential that Precourt could sell the Crew to a local investor and start a new team in Austin, which doesn't. If you're one of these ownership groups vying for an expansion franchise in Phoenix or Sacramento or wherever, I would think that makes you pretty upset that this city that wasn't even being considered for expansion is now all of a sudden leapfrogging you because they're going to have a stadium built in 2 years. Whereas the infrastructure's there in Sacramento, you can argue the infrastructure's there in San Antonio. Why all of a sudden, because Precourt can get a stadium built in 2021, why all of a sudden does Austin take precedence over those other expansion franchises? And I guess you could argue maybe there is some collusion too there with Precourt being on the expansion committee. So a lot of interesting things to keep your eye on here over the next couple of months as we get the whole Save the Crew MLS to Austin thing figured out. But go ahead and follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod, at Arman Kafai, at Jake Watroba, at Steven Jodarand. We'll talk to you guys next week.